Welcome to the Total Soccer Show Weekend Review. There was plenty of huge games where the action was splendid and several big teams saw their perfect starts ended. Real Madrid dropped points for the first time when they faced an Atleti side in their prime. Simeone's side massively raised their game and caused trouble with Julian Alvarez bagging a double. Napoli's perfect streak also crumbled when they went to San Siro and were humbled. Christian Pulisic had another superb game. Maybe actually is soccer's LeBron James. And Liverpool failed to keep their winning spark as they were denied 3 points at Selhurst Park. Elsewhere, Arsenal pulled off a clutch comeback win. Chelsea committed even more defensive sin. Big Angie's win column still reads none. And Ruben Amorim treated us to yet more of his 3-4-2-1 fun. My name is Ryan Bailey. Joining me today in a dynamic duo is Graham Ruthven. Hi, Graham.
Hi Ryan, how are you? Just the two of us today, as you mentioned there. I presume this is part of Europe's prize for winning the Ryder Cup. The two Americans have been banished from today's episode, so we can only apologise to America for that. Scott Scheffler should have turned up.
There we go. I will also apologise to Taylor Rocco that we've gone 30 seconds and have already mentioned golf on the weekend.
This is what happens when Taylor and Joe aren't here. Golf chat. Do you also want to talk about, what else do you want to talk about? Our favourite Orlando things, tennis as well. Let's get it all out of our system on this episode.
Very good. I must admit, Graham, I've been following the Ryder Cup news over the weekend, but I didn't watch a stroke. Is that the right word?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, yesterday was dramatic. I always find it a bit weird from the European side of things. People supporting Europe, like supporting a bureaucratic construct. Like, is anyone patriotic for Europe? But anyway, yesterday was dramatic. It looked like the US were going to get thumped and then very nearly pulled off an incredible upset. So that was good fun. I was watching that at the same time as AC Milan Napoli, which was also good fun. We'll talk about that later on.
We very much will. Quite soon we'll talk about that indeed, Graham. Yes, I heard that at the Ryder Cup there was plenty of decorum among the crowd and everything was very calm and not hostile at all. So that was my reading of the situation. There we go. Golf chat done. Let's get straight back into the soccer, shall we? But before we get there, patreon.com/Total Soccer Show. That is the best way to support this here endeavour. Thank you to everybody who does so already. We love you. And if you go on that bonus feed, you can get bonus episodes, including, but not limited to, Weekend Review Extra. All the soccers we don't fit in this episode goes into Extra. Go check it out there. We'll also get bonus video content and access to our Discord server. All the cool kids hanging out, not chatting about golf, on our Discord server.
There was no golf chat. I went into the other sports channel over the weekend and there was nothing, just a lot of NFL stuff that I didn't understand. I was disappointed.
Oh, were you fishing? Were you fishing for golf, Graham?
I was, yeah. I thought, this is our chance. We finally, a big win for Europe, but nobody was interested.
Oh, well, okay. Maybe there were reasons for that because of the big win for Europe. I don't know.
Possibly.
Yeah. Anyway, let's talk about Europe specifically. Why don't we go to Italy? Where, as you mentioned, Graham, there was a big game at San Siro. Milan 2, Napoli 1. Milan becoming the first side to beat Napoli in 17 league matches. Milan going top of the league on goal difference with this one as well. Salamakis and Pulisic with the Milan goals. KDB with the penalty consolation. Pulisic in sensational form once again, Graham. The assist for the opener and the second goal. Putting on the Jets Gareth Bale style as well, which was a lot of fun to see on the touchline. We, Graham, last week billed this as a test for Milan, if they could really hang at the top of Serie A this season. They passed the test?
Oh, absolutely. This was a big statement by AC Milan, who had been impressive to start the season, but as you say, Ryan, hadn't really had a real test. They'd had a favourable run of fixtures until this point. This was a real test, and I think they just about deserved the win. Obviously, the game state changed in the second half after the red card, but I thought AC Milan, they just executed their game plan better, right? I certainly thought their game plan was more coherent. I don't think Conte responded well to the red card. I thought some of his changes were confusing. Maybe we'll go into that a little bit later on. But you can tell Milan now believe in the direction they're heading in. It feels like some of the toxicity of last season has subsided. Notably, the Curva Sud returned for this game. They had been protesting the ownership. Clearly, the team is doing too well now for them to get hung up on their...
Greg. Hold the presses. A Serie A group of fans were protesting something at a game. Are you sure?
I know. Revelation.
Wow.
But they were back in the stands for this one because obviously the team on the pitch is doing a lot better to start the season. And I thought it was a great atmosphere. The spectacle really came across on the TV. they can't knock down this place, right? Like San Siro. It's been a while since I've been to San Siro. I'm going to go again. If they are going to knock it down, I'm going to go again before it's a pile of rubble. But you can't get rid of this stadium. It's just so iconic on nights like this. And AC Milan, they, as I say, they earned their win. They were the better team.
I'm not sure about the San Siro story because I think we've heard this line before because Inter and Milan have both sort of announced that they're together going to build something new, right? But, I mean, we've heard this tale.
We have, like, you can set your watch by it, like every 18 months, but it feels like it's now a little bit closer. I think there's some kind of, because obviously the issue is it's owned by the council, right? It's owned by the local authorities, by the city, which is that's customary for Italian cities, right? For the city to own the stadium. Obviously modern football's moved on beyond that, so these teams like Juve own their stadium now, and there's a couple others as well. I think there's an acknowledgement from the council now that these clubs need to have their own home, so they're open to the idea of getting rid of it. But I say we start a picket line outside, Ryan, and or you can lie in front of the bulldozer, the steamroller, whatever it is. Yeah, I'm volunteering you for that.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, well, Graham, let's get back to the game for a second. You mentioned that the substitutions. Was that Allegri or Conte you were referring to there about these post-penalty subs?
Yeah, Conte, I meant specifically. So I thought his changes were really strange because he takes off. So obviously there's the red card to Estepunan, and then obviously the penalty goal, the resulting penalty goal to make it 2-1. At that point, Napoli are back in the game. But at that point, Conte takes off De Bruyne and McTominay. Right at the moment, I would have thought they would be more important, right? At that point, it's clear Napoli are going to have loads of the ball. They're going to be slinging crosses into the box, and who better to be slinging those crosses than KDB? And who better to get on the end of those crosses than Scott McTominay, who had already got on the end of one of them for the chance that led to the penalty. So I understand why Conte rolled the dice on Luka, the centre forward, because Rasmus Højlund had been so ineffective until then. But it seemed clear to me that the threat was going to come from the midfield or the wide areas, where he also took off Politano, their best winger. So, that was a little bit confusing to me. I will say I thought David Neres was a threat. He has that shot that clips the top of the post, and his long range, he's always like a good long range shooter, which was, with Milan sitting so deep was valuable. But I just thought Conte turned way too hard to fringe players like Noah Lang and Elmas at such a key moment of the match. I don't really think that worked out for Napoli in the second half.
Yeah. Graham, we need to talk about Milan, specifically their American superstar, Christian. Is it Mate or Mate, his middle name?
You tell me, you're a close family friend.
I'll ask Kelly next time I see her. But it's Christian Pulisic. Obviously, what was it? 2 goals and assists last game. This one, obviously, performing very highly in this game as well. Has he found his position, this kind of second striker in the Allegri setup? Is this peak Pulisic because of the setup that's around him?
Well, I mean, it seems that way. Obviously, the wide position that ordinarily you would place him in doesn't really exist in this Allegri team, where it's wing backs. Obviously, on the left side it's Estepunan, and then on the right side, Salamaker's on paper performing that right wing back role, but obviously he likes to get forward into central areas, get into the box. But Pulisic is a bit of an awkward fit for both of those positions. So yeah, he's been playing as this sort of second striker, where he just has freedom to go wherever he sees there's an opportunity for him to open up space. He's flying at the moment. This is probably the best I've ever seen Christian Pulisic, and he's been performing at a high level consistently for the last 2 seasons. But right now he's just he's an excellent difference maker for this Milan team. It feels like he's been given real responsibility by Allegri. He's the man who's trusted to be the primary difference maker. He has that freedom to drift out to the left, where he likes to take up runs, but start runs, and take up good positions. But he's also drifting over to the right. He's getting into the box, which is I always think, going back to his Chelsea days, that's a marker of when Christian Pulisic is in form. It's when he's when he's finishing opportunities, like he did for the second goal, and obviously the first goal he creates in the first half, where he skips down the left side. I think it's Mario Nucci who comes over, who was making his first start for Napoli. I think Napoli missed Buongiorno in that central defence, but he skips past the challenge Pulisic and then picks out Salamakers at the back post. So he was excellent. Unfortunately, we only got 60 minutes of him because of the Estepunan red card, and he was the sacrificial lamb to reshuffle the system. But right now he looks like the best player in Serie A you'd have to say the best team in Serie A at this moment after this result.
Yeah, so Graham, is it a case that he's just got more freedom, as you mentioned? He was kind of in a lot of different positions on the field here. Is it the leash has come off a little bit with Pulisic? Is that the difference?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when the managerial change was made last season after Pioli gets sacked, or sorry, excuse me, they went through 3 different managers, didn't they? After Conceição gets sacked, it just felt like he was getting bogged down in midfield a lot with a lot of touches of the ball, which is not really where you want Christian Pulisic a lot of the time. You want him attacking open space, you want him doing things quickly, and that's what he was doing in the first half of this game. I thought the first half in general was really interesting because it ebbed and flowed, right? So Milan started really strongly. They're 1-0 up within 3 minutes. Then the game state shifted, where Napoli were much more proactive after that. They had a lot of territory in the Milan half. Mike Maignan had to make a couple of good saves. But Milan still had that threat on the break, and there's an opportunity for Fofana to make it 2-0. He makes a run from deep, and Pulisic plays this excellent pass through to him and releases him through, and he shoots over the bar. Might have done better. Then it's 2-0 after 3-0, after 30 minutes, excuse me, after a brilliant run, as I mentioned, by it's Pavlovic down the left side this time, which they seem to be having a lot of joy down that left side, and then Pulisic finishes it nicely inside the box. But it ebbed and flowed the first half, and Napoli came into it in certain points. It just was about whether they could create in and around the Milan half, and ultimately they struggled to do that, and that's why I was a little bit frustrated or confused even by why De Bruyne and McTominay came off when they did.
Yeah, that was a bit puzzling. I will admit that. The midfields, Graham. Obviously, we talk a lot about Napoli's midfield, Anguissa, McTominay, Lobotka being pretty solid, but it was Milan's midfield I was really impressed with in this game. Luka Modric is just. It seems like class is permanent with him, doesn't it? I think he's found the right team in the right league at this stage of his career, I would suggest. And Rabiot and Fofana as well in that middle. It seems like they've got a really strong core, Milan, at the moment.
Yeah, and I think having Rabiot and Fofana around Modric is really key, because the two of those players, particularly Fofana, do a lot of the legwork for Modric, who is 40 years old, and physically there is going to be some sort of drop-off. I do wonder if Allegri will, over the course of the season, start to rest and rotate him a little bit more, because towards the end of his time at Real Madrid, he just couldn't play. Like, there will be points when Milan are playing, midweek games in Serie A and then got a game at the weekend. I kind of struggle to see Modric playing both of those matches, or at least 180 minutes of those matches when those weeks happen in the winter time. But for now, he just looks like very, very quickly he's slotted in as the beating heart of this Milan team, right? The creative heart, but also the person who builds the rhythm in the centre of the pitch. There were times in this game, particularly when Milan went to 10 men, where Modric just takes it upon himself to drop into the back three, takes the ball, just takes a little bit of relief of pressure off Milan, and just gives them some oxygen to breathe, and having him in that midfield was just invaluable. He still looks like one of the best midfielders in the world at 40 years old. So there's hope for us all.
Yeah. I equate this, Graham, to when you're playing rec league soccer and like you have a guest player come in, and there may be an actual soccer coach, and there may be 10 or 15 years older than you. They just have an aura of respect around them, and they slow the game down. They know exactly what they're doing. They're sort of dictating the whole game. That was what I felt Modric was kind of doing in this game as well, which I don't mean that to belittle the colleagues around him, but it's that experience that he brings, isn't it? Yeah,
I mean, there's just certain players you can't really put your finger on why they have that quality, but aura's the word, right? And you see it at all levels of the game where there's just someone who has a sort of an intangible quality. There's a respect, and they just get more time on the ball because of it. And Modric, as I say, in that second half, he was really important to just taking control of the ball, putting his foot in the ball at crucial moments. Also, the recognition of when to do that as well. There were times when it felt like Napoli were building up a head of steam. They were getting balls into the box, and invariably Modric would be the one at that specific moment to take the heat off. He's excellent at that.
Very much so. All right, Graham. So we've got Milan at the top. We've got Napoli in second. Roma also. All three of those teams on 12 points at the moment. Juve just behind. We had Juve and Atalanta drawing 1-1 this weekend. Roma getting that 2-0 win over Verona. And Inter in fifth getting a 2-0 win at Cagliari. Do we think this is the Serie A table kind of shaping up how we're expecting it to at this point? Those top three teams, for example, we're expecting those to be in the race at this point. Obviously, it's early days. We're only at the end of September at this point, but can we tell anything from what we've seen so far?
I mean, it's exciting, right? You can always rely on Serie A to provide some title excitement, especially in contrast to the other European leagues, which often feel a little bit dull by comparison. But I think we can't discount Inter at this moment in time. I think going beyond those top 5 teams, I'd be surprised if anyone else got into the mix for the Scudetto this season. So that would be Milan, Napoli, Roma, Juve and Inter. I think Juve have started the season relatively well. Last couple of games they've dropped points. So I think there's still question marks over their attacking productivity, which is obviously something that goes back to Thiago Motta's time last season. They just didn't score enough goals. And even with someone like Kenan Yildiz for Juve kind of making a big step up this season, I think those question marks remain. But right now, if you were to ask me who's going to win the title, I do think it's between Milan and Napoli. Those are the two teams that... I mean, Napoli haven't been that good to start the season, but it just feels like their floor as a team is really high. They've got good options, good depth. And look, maybe Conte, maybe that depth sort of scrambled Conte's mind in that second half, whereas if he doesn't have those options, he just sticks with a more consistent lineup for the rest of the game, and maybe De Bruyne and McTominay stay on. So maybe that's a detrimental thing for Napoli. I also saw Kevin De Bruyne afterwards, or saw Conte responding to Kevin De Bruyne afterwards, questioning that substitution, and Conte really quite hard with his response to Kevin De Bruyne, which makes you think, oh, is this the start of the spiral? Is it happening already for Conte? So we'll see what that develops into. But yeah, Milan and Napoli for me right now. Although I haven't watched much of Roma, maybe they're flying under the radar a little bit. Those look like the two strongest teams in that league this season.
Yeah, I'd say so. One more note from me on Napoli, Graham. Rasmus Højlund, he felt a bit more Premier League Højlund than Serie A Højlund in this game. That's all I'll say. And I'm not sure that's the leading man for a title-winning team, possibly.
Just not involved enough. It was very Manchester United, where just no service to him at all. There was a couple of points as well where I thought De Bruyne was slightly frustrated with his runs as well. So, yeah, I got that vibe as well. I think Conte will be pleased when Lukaku is back from injury. I'll put it that way.
Indeed. All right. Well, a very good weekend to be a Milan fan. Very good times happening in Serie A. This is probably the biggest. I think we build this as the biggest game of the European calendar so far this season, and it's kind of lived up to it. Very good indeed. When we come back after this very quick break, we've got the Madrid derby and all of the Premier League and a lot more coming. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to the weekend review. Let's take ourselves to Madrid, where I think, Graham, we've got a result that possibly no one saw coming. Atletico Madrid 5, Real Madrid 2. Julian Alvarez on the double in this one. Real Madrid's perfect start, as mentioned, is over. They suffered a sore loss, thanks to Sorloth and co. No excuses there. We weren't good enough, said Xabi Alonso. No excuses for my pun either. Atleti taking full advantage, Graham, of an off day from Real Madrid. Is the story as simple as that, or is there more to it?
I mean, this is maybe the one outcome that I didn't consider, because we said on last week's Weekender, on Friday's Weekender episode, that it was difficult to know. It was difficult to get a read on both of these teams, because clearly Real Madrid had been the more informed side, but they hadn't had similar to what I was saying about Milan, they hadn't had a serious test yet. And Atleti, while they'd been in poor form, had a couple of difficult games, particularly in the Champions League against Liverpool. So I didn't think it was out of the question that Atleti would win this. I don't think I ever considered that we'd see a scoreline as emphatic as this. And actually, the scoreline ended up flattering Real Madrid because they created next to nothing in this game. They scored with basically the only two chances that they had in the game. The Arda Güler one is the only real time they get into the penalty box, and then the Mbappe goal is just a classic Mbappe breakaway where nobody can really stop him. Besides that, this was a sustained, at least up until about 70 minutes when Simeone made a couple changes and they kind of sought to protect what they had. Up until then, it was like a sustained Atletico performance where they were well on top, they had much better intensity, their game plan was more coherent, they were creating opportunities, and yes, this was poor from Real Madrid. I didn't expect Atleti to put them in their place like this in this game.
If you've got a team like Real Madrid, Graham, who, is it fair to say, rely on sort of individual moments of brilliance? So they suffer when those brilliant moments don't come, as you mentioned, those 2 shots and 2 goals. But also, you suffer when you have individuals who let themselves down a little bit, like Huijsen and Carreras in the back, I thought weren't very good. Jude Bellingham, I didn't think he had a terrible game, but coming back from injury maybe a bit too soon, arguably.
Yeah, he didn't have a terrible game, he just didn't do all that much, right? And that was the big headline ahead of the game. Bellingham was given his first start of the season. He came in for Mastantuono, and I think that was a mistake because the off-ball problems of last season returned for Real Madrid. They were just far too easy to play through. And I'm not saying Mastantuono fixes that on his own, but one of the things that Alonso clearly likes about him is how good he is against the ball high up the pitch, right? And Bellingham, he isn't the worst out of possession, but he was a non-factor in this game, and he clearly just wasn't fit. He couldn't cover the space in the centre of the pitch. There was just so much room in that area for Atleti to play through. They found it very easy to play through the first line of confrontation, which basically was non-existent from Real Madrid in this game. It didn't help that individually, as you say, Ryan, there was a few players who just didn't perform. I think you're right on Dean Huijsen, was physically overmatched against Sorloth in the box. Carreras as the left back wasn't doing enough to stop those balls into the box either, and that was such a key part of Atleti's game plan, was just getting cross after cross after cross into the box, which is Simeone ball. It might not be very nuanced, and maybe it's not even very modern, but that's what the best Atleti teams do. And so they went back to that sort of approach. In central midfield, it didn't help that Tchouaméni, I thought, had his worst game of the season, and then it was just way too much for Fede Valverde to do on his own and cover it all on his own. If Bellingham's having a bad game and Tchouaméni's having a bad game, there's only so much that Valverde can do on his own. And then Raul Asensio, just going back to the back line, he comes on for Eder Militao. Raul Asensio was one of the worst players at the elite level at defending open space, right? I've seen that. He had an excellent first 5 games. There's a FOTMob article out there by me from last season on how Real Madrid have found their next great homegrown defender, and I would like to revoke everything that I said in that article because he's been really poor for a prolonged period of time now, and when he is defending open space and defensive transition, just seems to make rash decisions. He's given away, I think, 4 penalties, not in this game of course, but he's given away 4 penalties as a Real Madrid player. So when Atleti were bursting through and getting runners forward, he and the rest of Real Madrid, they were just overwhelmed, and that's the first time that we've really seen that from Real Madrid under Alonso this season.
Yeah. To come back to Atleti, Graham, obviously you mentioned sort of they were kind of at their aggressive, slightly Poophauser-y best, really good work rate in this one, classic Simeone ball. So what were they doing differently here that they haven't really done in the previous few weeks of games? Is it just they've sort of stepped it up for a Madrid derby and gone back to basics, if you will? Like what's changed in their master plan over from this weekend to last?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not sure I've got a great answer for it. I mean, the big differences were not even really sort of tactical things, because they were playing in this 4-4-2 shape in this game, which obviously Simeone sort of messed around with a back 3 earlier in the season, but 4-4-2, generally speaking, has been the shape that he's used throughout his Atletico Madrid career. But the difference was things like just the intensity they had from the start, and it wasn't exactly a full court press, because I don't think we'll ever see that from a Simeone team. But Atleti, they were just really intelligent, right? With when they were pressing the fullbacks when they could, they pinched the midfield, and they were winning it high up the pitch when they could, and then when they did win it back, they were attacking that space at speed. And I mentioned the crosses; that was a big part of their game plan. I do think that was a difference. I think they had their most crosses in a game for something like, I'm sure I read Opta saying it was like for 2 seasons, their most crosses in a game. And they clearly had big Sorloth in the centre over Antoine Griezmann. Antoine Griezmann's a much better soccer player than Alexander Sorloth is. But Sorloth's an aerial threat, and they wanted to overmatch Huijsen and Raul Asensio when he came on, and even Eder Militao. And I just think the difference was in those wide areas where they quite quickly got Marcos Llorente. I mean, Llorente was everywhere. There was a moment in the second half of this game where he sprints out from the back and wins a tackle high up the pitch, and the whole stadium's getting up, and Simeone's doing his whole orchestration routine. It was great. But that's the sort of thing that Llorente gives you on that right side. And then on the left side, of course, it was Hanko as well, who was much better than what we've seen so far this season. He's a centre-back by trade, but he comes in at left-back for this game. His crossing, I thought, was surprisingly great in this match. So it just felt like they were activating the wide areas, they were overwhelming the wide areas, and then creating as many like penalty box engagements and opportunities as they could.
Yeah. I did enjoy Antoine Griezmann coming on, ending that 22 league game goalless streak as well. That was a nice touch. And Alvarez, Graham, game of his life, arguably, in this one. That 4-2 goal was rather good. I did enjoy it generally. I thought in this game, like every 25-yard free kick was a really good shot rather than anything else. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, Julian Alvarez, I'm a huge fan of Julian Alvarez. I find it a bit strange that he doesn't get mentioned alongside some of the best forwards in the world, because I think he's right up there. You say, Ryan, best game of his career. Well, he scored a hat-trick in the game like 4 days before this one. He's got 5 goals in his last 2 games. So maybe that was the best game of his career. But I take your point in terms of like big occasion, big match. This felt like him really making a statement, particularly because there's been a little bit of angst between him and Simeone. I've mentioned this on the show before. He was spotted mouthing, what was it he said, me again or something like that when he got substituted off in a previous game.
Always me.
Yeah, the Balotelli. But his last 2 games have been such a showcase of how good he is. He can pretty much do it all, right? He's a good dribbler, he's an excellent passer, his work rate is incredible, he can score free kick bangers from 20 yards out. He's just like the all-round threat that frankly this Atleti team needs, because they don't as effective as they were with crosses into the box in this game, they don't really like create in a traditional sense on the ball, so having someone like Julian Alvarez to do that basically on his own is so important, and in this game that's exactly what he did.
Yeah, indeed. Graham, any concerns for the Xabi Alonso project at this point for Real Madrid? How are we thinking?
I mean, Carvajal being out for 5 weeks with a calf injury coming off in this game is a concern. Leaves Real Madrid without a proper right back for the next month and a half because Alexander-Arnold is out injured as well right now. I also think there's a question about, we've touched upon this maybe slightly already, but I do think there's a question about where Jude Bellingham fits into this team under Alonso. And maybe the answer will ultimately be that he drops deeper into the central midfield too. And he'll also get fitter and sharper in this team. I don't think this match was a fair reflection of him or how good he can be. But I don't know if I can envisage him. When I think of Bellingham in that first season at Real Madrid, when he was, arguably the best player in the world, he was doing the kind of box crashing hybrid number 9 thing. And I just can't envisage him doing that role for an Alonso team like he did for Ancelotti, which is a shame because he's so good at that. But he might have to adapt to a more sort of like conventional central midfield role. But he will have to adapt. Like the position, the role, the duties that he had for Ancelotti have changed pretty dramatically now that he's come into an Alonso team. And he's missed a lot of football to start the season. So a lot of these other players have had a kind of integration process, and he hasn't had that until now.
There we go. Well, next up for Real Madrid, Graham, in the Champions League on Tuesday, early kickoff in Kazakhstan. Kairat, Real Madrid have got. So that could either be a really tough test or one to run up the numbers. I'm not quite sure what it's going to be. Maybe the latter.
I read an Athletic article this morning. It was a really interesting article, and it was like a deep dive on the aftermath of this result, which that kind of outlines what it's like to be Real Madrid manager. You've won every single match. If Real Madrid had won this game, it would have been, what did we say in the weekend? The greatest ever start that a Real Madrid manager has ever had. He loses one game alone, so all of a sudden it's like a crisis, and there's an in-depth piece from the Athletic. But in this piece, they were talking about that flight to Almaty in Kazakhstan, which is 4,000 miles to Kazakhstan, and how I think the quote from the source was the flight felt like a funeral or something like that after the game. So they'll need to pick themselves up for that match. I think they'll be fine against Kairat Almaty. I think they might rack up a bit of a response there.
Maybe so. You might be quite right there, Graham. All right, so a very big result for Atletico Madrid. I think it's the first time they scored 5 goals against Madrid in like a million years. That was the stat I saw. So very impressive stuff from them. Barcelona getting a 2-1 win over Real Sociedad as well. Comeback win this was, their 6th win in 7 matches, which I believe put them top of the league. They're still top of the league on 19 points above Real Madrid. Hey, Graham, we might have a 2-horse race in this Spanish title.
No,
never. We might do. Shaping up that way.
It never happens. Exciting I'm just looking through, when is the first Clásico of the season? It is the 26th of October, so basically a month from now is the first Clásico of the season. I'm already looking forward to that one. I think that's going to be good.
Still have some Kazakhstani jet lag on the Madrid team at that point. We shall see. Very good stuff. All right, let's take one more quick break. When we come back, we've got the Premier League, the Bundesliga, much more. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to the Weekend Review. Let's talk Premier League in C Block on the Weekend Review. What a world we're living in, Graham Rutherford. Goodness me. Well, let's kick off, why don't we, with Arsenal's 2-1 win, a comeback win at Newcastle. Gabriel scoring the 96th minute winner for the visitors after Mikel Merino's header cancelled out Nick Voltemar, the big man's opener, which came from a pretty cheap corner kick giveaway as well. All 3 goals from headers. Were they all set pieces as well? Set piece FC, both teams, maybe?
Proper football, it's back. Yeah, I did think that with Voltemada, who is one of my favourite players already. I love how all the Bundesliga experts before he signed for Newcastle, and I think they were right about this, were telling us, this guy, he might be 6 foot, 6'7" or something? He looks even taller than 6'7". This guy, might be 6'7", but he's not a classic target man. And Eddie Howe said, I'll decide that. 2 headed goals in his first 3 games, which is more than he ever scored for Stuttgart, apparently. He only scored 1 headed goal for Stuttgart. So Newcastle see a big man, they're going to use him as a big man.
Yeah, definitely. So what do we make of this game, Graham? Is this, by the way, before we get into it, is this like a big rivalry game now? Has Newcastle Arsenal become like a big
Seems that way.
thing? How's that happened?
I think there's just needle between them, right? Like Arsenal, Joe Linton seems to rub them up the wrong way, and Jason Tyndall, I think, has annoyed them in the past. And the thing is, like, Newcastle have won 4 of their last. I can't remember if this is the total record or if it's just home games, but they've won 4 of their last 5, either total or home games against Arsenal. So that's at the core of it, right? If you have a team that you feel is below you, but continues to be a bit of a bogey team and beat you, then that's going to become a rivalry. And I know it's only September, but this felt really important for Arsenal. And some of that was down to the Palace win over Liverpool the day before and how that opened the door. But I think a bigger factor was how Arsenal had fallen short in some of the other big games so far this season. The draw against City last week, the defeat to Liverpool in particular, where they faced a lot of criticism. It felt like a really pivotal match for Arsenal at a stadium they found difficult to play at. Everyone finds difficult to play at St James's Park against this Newcastle team, and the response from them, particularly to going a goal behind, I thought was excellent. I thought Arsenal in general were good. There has been some criticism of them this season, some of it fair, some of it unfair, some of it coming from me, particularly after that Liverpool game. Here, I thought they were pretty fundamentally the stronger team. I thought they played some really nice stuff in the first half where they were getting players forward quickly. Nick Pope made a couple of really big saves from Eze, and then there's another one from Timber as well. And that Newcastle goal wasn't really a reflection of the way that the first half went. And what I liked about Arsenal was after they went behind, they upped the tempo of their play. And even when they got the equaliser, which a point away to Newcastle at St James's Park might not have been the worst result, but there was a real drive to go for a second one, even if that was a bit of a gamble. And they could have left themselves a bit open at the back, like they did for the Jacob Murphy chance in this game, where he races through and Declan Rice has to recover and make the challenge. But that's what I've wanted from Arsenal. I don't think you can win a Premier League title without landing some punches against some good teams, and that's what they did here, even if they had to wait until stoppage time to do it.
Yeah, completely agree that the best team won here as well. Gabriel seemed to be the main man, in my opinion. Not just getting the last-minute goal, but he had that off-the-ball moment with Voltemade as well. And was he? I think he was the penalties controversy. Was he the handball as well? I think he was when he slid in.
Yes, the slide tackle. I think he was. Yeah, I think that was him. Yeah. I mean, he does this quite often, Gabriel. He had a great game, but also like a slightly mad game where you feel like he's on the verge of being sent off. And of course, the Voltemade goal comes from what I thought was a pretty embarrassing moment from Gabriel, where he tries to imply there's a foul. He feels the hands or the fingertips of Voltemade on his back, and then he sort of crumples to the ground, hoping that the referee's going to bail him out. I just think stand tall and make the header. Like, it would have been the better decision to make there. But yeah, he responded really well. And I think when you play Newcastle physically, you just have to match them, right, in whatever way you can. That midfield unit of Tonali, Guimaraes and Joe Linton, I think physically is the most formidable midfield in the Premier League. Now they've added a man Mountain as their centre forward and Voltemade, and I think the St James's Park atmosphere feeds into their approach as well. So yeah, a real a performance where you saw some backbone from Arsenal, which perhaps had been lacking in some of the other games they've played.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. What about Newcastle though, Graham? 1 win out of 6 so far in this Premier League season. Were we expecting a bit more from them at this point?
I don't know, because obviously they come out of the transfer window, they've lost their best player, and it still feels like they are integrating Voltemade as well as he has started. That changes the focus of their attack completely, right? Where he's a completely different type of focal point in that forward line, where Alexander Isak was all about wanting to get him behind and use his pace, and Voltemade isn't that player at all. So I think there might be a period of integration there. Johan Wissa hasn't come into this team either. I think either is still out with injury or is going through his kind of pre-season at the moment. I would have preferred Anthony Elanga to start this game. I think his pace as an outlet would have been really useful and might have helped to pin back Ricardo Calafiori on the left side. Did you catch the moment with the towel, Ryan, with Calafiori? That was one of my favourite moments of the match, where Calafiori goes over to Nick Pope to steal. So throw in, obviously he wants to do the long throw in routine, the Tony Pulis thing, and he runs over to the goal before taking the throw in, to grab Nick Pope's towel, as goalkeepers have towels, and then runs back over until the referee tells him off and says, "Nah, you can't do that." So like a naughty schoolboy who was told off. But yeah, I thought Elanga might have done a little bit more to get in behind. I actually thought Malik Chow, the centre back, had a really good game. And I think that's the positive for Newcastle, is that probably their two best players on the day were two new signings, Voltemade and Malik Chow. But other than that, it feels like their defensive record has been maybe getting them through matches this season, and we need to see a little bit more from them in the final third.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And just to go back to Arsenal one more time, they showed, it sounds trite to say, but they showed a lot of character here, didn't they, as you sort of outlined? I think, is it the sort of character that we would expect them to push Liverpool all the way this season? And maybe we'll talk about Liverpool in a minute, but they maybe their cracks are starting to show a little bit as well. So there's an opportunity for Arsenal to push through here.
Yeah, I mean, this potentially could be a big catalyst for Arsenal. And when I've been critical of Arsenal in the last few weeks, it's nothing like personal or against Arsenal, the team. I want them to... my frustration from watching Arsenal at times has been I feel like they've got more within them. So I think there was a learning from Arteta, particularly with his lineup in this game, where he starts Eberechi Eze in a central role. I think ultimately his position for this Arsenal team might be on the left side, but Odegaard is obviously not fully fit at the moment. He's not in the best of form either. He could have gone with Merino, which was the lineup, the central midfield lineup that I think he used for both the Arsenal and the Man City game. Instead, he brings in Eze, who's obviously just a much more of a creative force in that midfield, and he has that quality where he can drop deep to pick up the ball, he can pick a pass, he's a much better dribbler than Odegaard and certainly Mikel Merino. And he made a real impression on this game with a couple of shots in and around the box. So I thought that was encouraging from Arteta, that he was willing to change it up in that way. I also thought that just gave the midfield two of Rice and Zubimendi just more space and made their roles clearer, and I thought they had their best game as a pairing together, although Rice was a little bit below average for his final third touches in this game, but I just think that was due to Eze being ahead of him. So I felt like there was good security to Arsenal through the midfield and into the attack, and as I said at the top of this segment, I think they were the deserved winners of this game.
Yeah, 100%. All right, big weekend for Arsenal, and not just, as Graham outlined, because of their result at Newcastle, but also Crystal Palace getting a 2-1 win over Liverpool. And Ketty with the 97th minute goal, and a deserved win for Palace, so a similar storyline to Arsenal in some ways there. What do we think about... We can't sound too many alarm bells, as you sort of mentioned with Real Madrid, Graham, because Liverpool are coming off a perfect start to get to fall at this hurdle. But are there any cracks that we're seeing starting to show for Liverpool?
Yeah, there are a few. I've been saying for a few weeks that Liverpool's results have been better than their performances, and this was their, messiest performance so far. I thought they got what they deserved because they needed Alisson Becker to produce a number of saves to stay in the game in the first half. They were very, very vulnerable in defensive transition. And that's the most worrying thing for Liverpool, because that is something that we've seen in pretty much every game they've played so far this season, even going back to that opening weekend game against Bournemouth at home, where Bournemouth bring it back to 2-2 in quick transition. And it just feels like they're lacking a bit of security in midfield. I don't know whether it's because they're using two different fullbacks now. As much as we all used to highlight Trent's defensive weaknesses, I don't know whether there was a comfortability there with the back four of knowing where he would be at certain moments, and now with different right backs it feels like there's not that comfortability. And obviously Melis Kirkes at the left back is very ambitious, more ambitious I would say than Andy Robertson was in that position. And then individually, I don't know what's happened to Konate this season, because he has been all over the place, and not just this game. I mean, this was his worst game, but he's been poor all the way through this season, and in this match Mateta had the beating of him time and time again. So yeah, there are some warning signs for Liverpool, another one of them being defending set pieces. Both Palace goals come from set piece situations. They're not doing the defensive basics very well at the moment. There's a bit of a balance issue with the midfield as well. So I certainly think Liverpool there's no other team in the Premier League right now that has more options and more solutions to fix those problems, but Slot needs to recognise them all the same, because they're there and we saw them in this match, and Palace are good enough to expose them, and they are a good team. What's their winning runs, like 18 games now, Crystal Palace, which is incredible. Like we're at the point now, this might be a little bit premature, but I'm at the point now where I'm thinking, are we going to see a sort of Nottingham Forest style season from Crystal Palace here, where they're going to be up there because they've just been incredible for such a prolonged period of time under Oliver Glasner?
They are the only unbeaten team left in the Premier League. They're quite right. They're doing very, very well under Oliver Glasner. I think the answer to that question, Graham, is when Man United try and get him when they fire Ruben Amorim.
Don't do that, Oliver. You're better than that.
It's certainly a timeline I can see ahead of us. That's all I'm saying at this point, Graham. Just to come back to Liverpool for a second, it seemed like there are a couple of players who performed beneath themselves. Isak, not a classic game for him. Obviously, we're giving a bit of a benefit of the doubt, maybe for fitness and coming into this team at this point. Florian Wirtz, his season so far, 7 games, 0 goals, 0 assists. A boy.
Yeah, it's been a slow start for Florian Wirtz, and I'm still giving him not quite as much of the benefit of the doubt as we're giving Isak, because obviously he's come in just the last few games. I'm still giving Wirtz some leeway, because obviously it's a new country, new league, new team, new kind of role. Like, this role didn't really exist for Liverpool last season. Not in the same way, like maybe Szoboszlai played this role last season, but he's a very different sort of player than Florian Wirtz, who's sort of, you want to get him in between the lines, you want him to have lots of touches of the ball, you want him to create around the edge of the box. But yeah, I think it's fair to say that Liverpool would have expected more from Florian Wirtz for the money that they've paid. The fact, or the idea that he's this generational number 10, haven't really seen that from him for Liverpool so far this season, but I still have faith that that'll shine through it at some point. He's too good.
Yeah, indeed. All right, plenty more Premier League games to go through from this weekend. We're going to put those on Weekend Review Extra. And of course, there's Brentford 3-1 over Man United. Brighton's big win at Chelsea, the feeder team, beating the Chelsea at Stamford Bridge there. Well, maybe it's not unexpected. We'll get to that on Weekend Review Extra. I will, before we leave the Premier League ground, read out Ruben Amorim's quote from the Brentford game. When we win, it's not the system. When we lose, it is the system. It feels like a cell phone there. He's just kind of admitting the system is the problem with his quote there. But
when we're bad, it's because of the system. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's why everyone keeps mentioning it.
It's kind of what we're all saying, at this point. But there we go. More on that on Weekend Review Extra. One more league to quickly touch on in this here episode. It's the Bundesliga. Harry Kane scoring his 100th goal for Bayern Munich on Friday night. He took 104 matches to become the fastest player to reach a century for a single club. Haaland and Ronaldo both took a paltry 105 games. Who did it one game quicker than those two, getting to 100 for a single game. Those two, of course, doing it for City and Real Madrid, respectively. That was a 4-0 win at home for against Werder Bremen on Friday for Bayern Munich. Most bonkers scoreline of the weekend. Gladbach 4, Frankfurt 6. Yeah. Frankfurt was 6-0 up after 47 minutes.
I saw that, yeah. I didn't watch this game. I only saw that Frankfurt, people on my timeline were going nuts that they were 6-0 up, and Gio Reyna is injured again, which is not surprising to anyone. But yeah, I'm just looking through Frankfurt's scorelines this season. Have you seen these? This is nuts. We need to be watching some more Eintracht Frankfurt. So 4-1, 3-1, 3-1, 5-1, 3-4, 6-4. Yeah, I need an Eintracht Frankfurt season ticket. I think that's what we all need.
Put it in our veins, the Frankfurt entertainers. Yeah, I'm not sure how they almost gave up a 6-0 lead they had basically at half-time there. But yeah, no Gio Reyna in this one. He is injured, as Graham mentioned. 2-0 win for Dortmund at Mainz, and Leverkusen getting a 2-1 win on the road at St. Pauli. Malik Tillman playing 75 minutes of that game. All right, Graham, what say you and me head over to the bonus feed to chat a little bit more? Sound good to you?
Let's do it. The safe space.
Do you feel unsafe here?
No, I always feel safe with you, right?
Oh, that's lovely. What a lovely sentiment. Graham, thank you very much indeed for joining me on this weekend review. Much appreciated. Listener, thank you for joining us as well. But Graham, thanks again, once again. Pleasure as always. We did a gruesome twosome dynamic duo thing we should be proud of, maybe, or not?
We'll let the listeners decide about that. Thank you, Ryan Bailey.
Let's do that. Thank you very much, listeners. Once again, thank you very much. We're back on the feed very shortly. The MLS show coming to the feed on Tuesday and much more. But for now, bye.